but also for all the amazing technological and adoption backdrops that we've had. And I think even the first inklings of cryptocurrency and blockchain space's ability to actually have very significant positive impacts on the world.
Welcome to Bankless, where we explore the frontier of internet money and internet finance. This is how to get started, how to get better, and how to front run the opportunity. This is Ryan Sean Adams. I'm here with Dave Hoffman, and we're here to help you become more bankless. Ethereum in 2023. Best guest to talk about this, Vitalik Buterin, on the podcast today. We talk about what in the Ethereum application ecosystem, it's the title of his blog post, what excites Vitalik going into 2023. And a lot of optimism dropped in this episode that you got to stay tuned for. Before we get in, first, a little bit of housekeeping for Bankless listeners. We are revamping our sponsor strategy going into the next year, and we're going to be putting a focus more on the sponsors and the projects and the companies that are playing long-term games in crypto. And so we're excited to be building out a strategic relationship with Kraken. The reason David and I like Kraken is because they're one of the few crypto exchanges that didn't rug us last year, right, David?
Yeah, they've also implemented proof of reserves before anyone ever asked them to. So they have been leading the frontier of centralized crypto exchanges that can use cryptography to check themselves. And so implementing proof of reserves before they were asked to just indicates that Jesse and the rest of the Kraken team are here to do good by crypto and to leverage the powers that make crypto awesome. So thank you, Kraken, for sponsoring this, and we're excited to build out a strategic relationship with Kraken in 2023.
A few things to look out for in this episode, as always. Number one, why Vitalik thinks our villains are getting worse, actually worse, every single cycle. This being maybe the worst cycle of villains of all. Number two, why he plans to say Ethereum rather than crypto moving forward in 2023 to describe the industry instead of applications built on top of it. Number three, why he thinks simple DeFi good, complicated DeFi bad. There's a lot of nuance to that take that we get into. Number four, how he thinks Ethereum can actually solve the internet's big bad identity problem. How do you determine who are the bots and who are the humans? How do you keep identity decentralized? Vitalik's actually bullish that Ethereum has a massive role to play there. And finally, his answer to the question, what is Ethereum's most scalable use case? That's an answer, David, I don't think either you or I expected. You'll have to stay tuned for that in the episode as well. What should people pay attention to as we dive in here?
I think the big question that is the overarching theme about this episode is how proliferated are some of the use cases that many, many people, and definitely us, talk about. For example, DAOs. How much of a Cambrian explosion will there be with DAOs? How many DeFi apps are there actually going to be? Are there going to be as many DeFi apps as there are websites? Or are there just going to be a few DeFi apps? How many DAOs are there going to be? This is one of the conversations that we start off this podcast with Vitalik. He gives the example of Esperanto, a esoteric language that was meant to be a universal language for everyone to adopt that would help support global peace. And then also Linux, fantastic technology with a medium amount of adoption in some specific cases versus the internet, which is the most adopted piece of technology of all time. How much of crypto adoption will there be in contrast to these three anchor points? And what can we do to help make crypto be adopted as much as the internet and not be left to some esoteric hobbyist group who thinks the Esperanto language is cool? And so we talk about this frame of reference in the application layer, in the DAO layer, and the identity layer, and how Ethereum can really change the game, and hopefully how we can move the needle in 2023 and look back on 2022 and take some of the lessons out of 2022 to make sure that we don't repeat them, Ryan.
Look, guys, every episode with Vitalik is a must listen. This is certainly no exception. And David, I'm excited to explore some of those topics with you in the debrief as well. That's the show we record after the show for our premium members. And in that, David, I think I want to talk to you about this idea of crypto maybe being a niche versus going mainstream, something like the internet. And also this theme that Vitalik kept coming back to in this episode, which was we actually have a role to play.
Yes.
We can make crypto bigger and better, and we can actually build towards a future where crypto is a technology adopted like the internet and not just some esoteric niche. So we'll be talking about that in the debrief too. Guys, we're going to get right to our episode with Vitalik. But before we do, we want to tell you about these tools to help you go bankless.
The Brave Wallet is your secure multi-chain on-ramp into Web3, and it's built directly into the Brave privacy browser. Gone are the days of managing multiple wallet extensions that put you at risk of phishing, spoofs, and tracking. With the Brave Wallet, you can securely manage your crypto assets across more than 100 different chains, including Ethereum, Layer 2s, Solana, and more, all without downloading risky extensions. The Brave Wallet is easy to set up and removes the headache of jumping between wallets and extensions. It's lightweight, but packed with great features, like built-in token swaps, buying and holding NFTs with a gallery view, and support for hardware wallets. But also much more than that, because Brave is shipping new features every single month, with a mission to make Web3 easier to navigate for its over 55 million users. Wallet extensions are a thing of the past, so get started with Brave's Web3 ready browser today and experience a decentralized web seamlessly without all the clutter. You can download the browser at brave.com/bankless and click the wallet icon to get started. Sequence is the all-in-one developer platform you need to build Web3 games and applications. For your users, Sequence is a smart wallet, and it's the easiest, most intuitive onboarding your users will ever experience, and comes with all the features users need to feel empowered in the Web3 world. Multi-chain support, NFT display, and users can buy SFTs, NFTs, and crypto directly with a credit or debit card. For developers, Sequence is the plug-and-play platform for Web3 games and apps. Their APIs let you bring NFTs, SFTs, and tokens into your game or application. And the Sequence relayer enables gasless transactions for your users. Sequence already powers some of the best Web3 games like Skyweaver, NFT projects like Cool Cats, and marketplaces like NiftySwap. And Sequence is compatible with all the EVM chains, including Ethereum, Polygon, Binance Smart Chain, Arbitrum, Optimism, and Avalanche. So go to sequence.xyz/bankless to start building or speak with the Sequence team today. The reality today is that 5 corporations control the entire world of social media. They own our names, they restrict our content, they monitor our every move. And their time is up, thanks to our sponsor, DeSo. DeSo is a layer 1 blockchain built from the ground up to decentralize and scale social networks. With DeSo, you can own your own identity, content, and social graph, and take it with you across hundreds of applications already built on the censorship-resistant DeSo blockchain. DeSo's storage advantages make it finally possible to build infinite state applications that can efficiently store and index large amounts of content and data fully on-chain. DeSo also offers multiple crypto-native monetization primitives for developers and creators, including social NFTs, social DAOs, social tokens, and social tipping. So in order to experience the social layer of Web3, go to deso.com and claim your username. That's DESO.com.
Bankless Nation, Vitalik Buterin is on the podcast today. Vitalik is your friendly neighborhood Ethereum developer. He's an alfalfa male who thinks we should rename gas to mana. I didn't know that, actually. Vitalik, welcome back to Bankless. How you doing?
Thank you so much, guys. It's great to be here.
Vitalik, 2022 has been an absolutely crazy year.
Disastrous.
Yeah, and like the industry is hurting, the community's feeling a lot of pain. Maybe just to kick this thing off, can you just give your thoughts and reflections on this? Like, was this unexpected? What's your assessment of the crypto community after this crazy year we've had?
So 2022 has been, I think, a complicated year, right? I think a lot of people are remembering the year for all of the terrible stuff that's happened, and within the crypto space for all of the multi-billion-dollar blowups. But I think it's also important to remember all of the various positives that the crypto space has seen, right? So the merge, I think, is the most recent one, but the big one, right? This is something that the Ethereum has been waiting for pretty much since its inception, right? And it's been delayed and complexified and turned out to be more complex than we thought. And lots of things have happened. But, now finally, as of September 15th, I think it was 0645 UTC, we actually have a proof of stake chain, right? And, doesn't it just feel good to be able to say, not Ethereum is going to reduce its energy consumption by 99.9%, but Ethereum has reduced its energy consumption by 99.9%, right? We're literally talking about going from a level of electricity consumption similar to the entire country of Austria to a level of electricity consumption similar to the entire country of, maybe San Marino, maybe Vatican, one of those, right? Huge success also from the just protocol security point of view. Even a huge success from the usability point of view, right? So, a lot of people don't realize this, but the merge was actually a transaction inclusion time decrease, right? And this happened for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is actually the easier one to understand, which is that, blocks have thousands of attestations that are coming on top of them, and so you have thousands of confirmations happening in parallel. And what that basically means is that a few seconds after one single block comes, you have the equivalent of what would in proof of work lanes be considered hundreds of confirmations, right? Like if you go to etherscan.io/blocks_forked, right? And the most recent forked block was 6 days ago. In the proof of work era, there would be multiple of these every hour, right? So that's the first reason. The second reason is that because block times now are, instead of being this like very random Poisson distribution thing where, sometimes you have a block every 2 seconds, sometimes you have a block only after a minute. Here we have a block in a nice regular pattern of 12 seconds. And what this means is that on average, you only have to wait 6 seconds for a transaction to get included, right? Now, this all sounds theoretical, but just from my own very practical experience, like my experience using Ethereum has just improved massively. It's like, night and day compared to, let's say, July 2020 before all of this stuff and before EIP 1559 happens, right? Like these days, when I send a transaction, I click send, I wait a couple of seconds, and then I see, oh, that transaction got included into one block and it already has one confirmation. Like, it's not quite competitive with, Web 2, oh my god, let's pay $35 million so the latency is 184 milliseconds instead of 212 milliseconds standards, but it's like already good enough to be competitive with, say, credit card point of sale systems, right? And that's something that I think is really important to appreciate. Like there's been just this massive increase in the usability of the base Ethereum chain that's happened pretty much under our noses. And EIP 1559 was the first half of this, the merge was the second half of this, and the third half of this, of course, is going to be rollups that have pre-confirmations, which is coming next year. And later on, we'll talk about how I think 2023 is going to be the year of rollups actually hitting stage 1 of trustlessness, which will mean that Ethereum actually finally is in its scalable era, right? But before that, so the merge happened, and the merge was amazing. 2022 was also the year of ZK EVMs, right? So 5 years ago, the zeitgeist basically was that, oh, there is this fancy thing called ZK Snark technology, and like maybe theoretically it could make abstract proofs and you can turn things into polynomials and like put stuff on top of stuff and maybe eventually verify an Ethereum block, but like, come on, it's so high overhead that's going to take like literally 4 weeks to make a proof and 4 years to actually audit the code to do any of that, right? But fast forward to 2022, and we have multiple ZK EVM implementations that are all promising some kind of mainnet launch next year. Like, this is amazing, right? Like, ZK EVMs have just gone from being a non-existent pipe dream to being the, I think, clear and manifest long-term and possibly even medium-term future of scaling Ethereum, right? So that's number 2. Then, on the adoption front, right, sign in with Ethereum has seen massive, gains in adoption. Ethereum, I think, was in a great position to take advantage of people's desire to explore the various alternative Twitters, alternative social media platforms, right? So Farcaster, sign into that with an Ethereum account. Lens, sign into that with an Ethereum account. And I've used, Farcaster and Lens, and they're actually great. Fast forwarding to earlier in the year, I feel like, a lot of crypto people have forgotten about this, but it's still super important to remember the invasion of Ukraine in February, right? Which is definitely an extremely tragic event overall. But the part of it that is, I think, quite happy is obviously that they succeeded in defending themselves far beyond most people's expectations. But I think, cryptocurrency payments actually worked for them when nothing else worked, and they've actually starting from that very first tweet that the country's official Twitter account made on the morning or the day after the invasion. Cryptocurrency actually has been a lifeline for the country, a lifeline for a lot of civilians and the people, right? And, that's just like one example. And then, you have all these various small examples, like, continuing adoption happening in places like Latin America, for example. I came to Argentina last year, I came to Argentina this year, and the level of sophistication has improved by a lot, right? And, one of the things I saw, for example, is when I visited just recently, there was a group, I forgot their name, I think it was called either DeFi Latam or something vaguely called like this, right? But this was just a really lovely person from Venezuela, and he was basically saying like, hey, the FTX situation is, helped me realize that DeFi actually is important, and like I want to help Latin Americans, who need crypto actually interact with crypto in ways that are decentralized and that involve self-custody. And this person actually knew a huge amount about layer 2 protocols, a huge amount about different forms of self-custody and all of these things. So all of those things are continuing to move forward. Cryptocurrency is continuing to get used for philanthropy a lot. Last year was the year of Crypto Relief India getting its money, but this year Crypto Relief India continued spending some of its money. Also Bulvi, it's this group that I helped spin up that used some of the money to put money into these more experimental, but potentially much more high payoff options in terms of protecting people now and in the future against viruses. And that's funded amazing stuff like, UV lamps, open source vaccine projects, and a whole bunch of things. And like cryptocurrency as a international payment instrument for philanthropy has just been huge there, right? So I think it's important to just remember 2022, both not just for the massive failures, but also for all the amazing technological and adoption backdrops that we've had. And I think even the first inklings of cryptocurrency and blockchain space's ability to actually have very significant positive impacts on the world. But that's the year. So.
Well, Vitalik, thank you so much for coming into this with your optimist hat on and just reminding us that sometimes the bad definitely drowns out the good. As someone who's been through multiple market cycles, like every single market cycle has the bad year, right? The down year, right? 2018 was my first one. There was one prior to that. Is 2022 unusual in any respects, or is this kind of par for the course of like, yeah, this is what happens at the latter half of a bull market? We have a lot of bad stuff, but meanwhile there is relentless adoption regardless, no matter what year it is. Is 2022 unusual for you in contrast to other years of crypto?
I'm trying to compare 2022 against the kind of early to mid bear market periods of the previous cycles, right? Actually, if you want to show people visuals, one great visual to show right now is the Bitcoin price from 2011 to now. Bitcoin just because Ethereum unfortunately didn't exist in 2011. But if you look at that, right, you see kind of the great cycles, right? And, you have 2011, and then the really big one at the end of 2013, and then the even bigger one in 2017, and then the and a super big one in 2021, right? And see the very first one at the left, it's like so low that we don't even notice it, right? Like if you just click the log button, wow. And so the 2015, right? So if you go down that flat part after the first peak, that's when Ethereum launched, right? So then 2018, that's the flat and the kind of cup and handle after the second bull market. That's when Uniswap was created and started existing for the first time. Now let's look at the flat and slightly decreasing line after the third bubble. That's when the merge happened, and we had multiple ZK EVMs, and we're starting to see serious layer 2 adoption. So the post-peak periods are always periods in which there actually are some pretty significant technological progress that is happening. They are periods where, I mean, often it's easier for people to get back to work because the numbers aren't giving them dopamine hits every 6 hours anymore. They're periods where like a lot of real work gets done, and even periods where the good gets separated from the bad, right? So one of the other reasons I wanted to make that analogy is that if you go back to 2014, right, the FTX of 2014, kind of, Mt. Gox, I actually kind of don't want to even call Mt. Gox the FTX of 2014, because I just feel like the way, like, Mark Karpelès did a bunch of horrible stuff, but I actually feel like the way that he has handled himself post blow up has actually been kind of honorable. Like, you know, he hasn't tried to give himself a Suju style redemption arc, or you know, in like kind of give himself attention on Twitter. He just kind of, you know, went quiet for a while, just diligently worked on helping people get their money back, and you know, working on Gox and other things, right? Like that's. It's like our villains are getting lower quality now, right? It's, you know, like Mark, I think, you know, he has actually, like improved in ways that like I just, unfortunately, you know, don't expect people like Sue and Kyle to improve even a decade from now. But you know, very much hope I'm wrong, though. I think you know, I'm always happy when people positively outperform my expectations, right? But the Mt. Gox blow up in 2014, it did feel like an existential crisis for the crypto space. It felt like a huge crisis for Bitcoin. It felt like a huge crisis for legitimacy. It was an invitation for regulators to swarm around the space. And it, you know, did have a lot of bad consequences in all kinds of places, and it made a huge number of people very unhappy. 2022, you know, a lot of very similar things are happening, except, you know, now we have I think a much more interconnected crypto space, and we have a lot more sophistication, and so, you know, on the other hand, a lot more fragility and contagion happening, right? Though I think it's important to remember that, like, in 2014, there was fragility and contagion too, right? Because Mt. Gox, when it collapsed, it was both the thing causing the crypto prices to crash, and also the thing that people were used to as being the place where prices moved up and down. And so the market had to, like, basically crash and change where its numbers were coming from at the same time, right? And here, you know, this year we had the double whammy of you know, obviously first Luna coming back down to Earth, and Terra going back down to somewhere much lower than Earth, and you know, 6 months later, obviously, FTX blowing up, and then a month after that, I think BlockFi is like in bankruptcy or something like that now, right? So it's definitely echoes of a similar situation, but at the same time, like, I don't want to all be rosy about it, because I think the other thing that's important to remember now that I think will make 2022 harder to recover from than 2014 is that I think a community having, like, this very high variance and, like, both high excitement and high turnoff approach to existing is something that's a very good strategy when you're trying to increase adoption from 0.1% to 10%, but it's a terrible strategy when you're trying to increase adoption from 10% to 70%, right? I think this is a criticism I would have made of Bitcoin maximalism sometime ago too, right? That if you're just a small community, then if you say, you know, incredibly over-the-top things about how the U.S. government is the primary source of all evil in the world, and money printing is the reason why, you know, we have some kind of military statist dystopia instead of, you know, Switzerland-like happy land for everyone, then it's, you know, you're going to turn off a lot of people who clearly kind of see through those attitudes and realize that there's a lot more complicated stuff going on in the world. But at the same time, there is going to be some portion of the population that, like, really believes in the thing you believe, or is really receptive to the thing you believe. And they're attracted to the passion with which you say it. And so they're going to, you know, want to come along with you. And, you know, being in this kind of siege mentality where they are one of the few brave soldiers pushing forward the future, even if, you know, huge portions of the mainstream world and the Paul Krugmans and the Elizabeth Warrens and all of those characters are, you know, rabidly against them. Like, there's a group of people to whom that like being in that position of the siege narrative really appeals to them, right? But that's how you get from 0.1% to 10%. And crypto is no longer in the stage of getting from 0.1% to 10%. I think there have been adoption charts and like estimates that people have attempted to make. And in some countries, ownership of cryptocurrency is like literally at the 10% of the population level. So now the space is at the level of trying to get from 10% to 70%. And that requires different strategies. And strategies where, this really crazy stuff that keeps losing people $5 billion keeps happening are like the exact opposite of what the space wants and needs to do, right? So I wanted to give the message of optimism, but also give this kind of important message that there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And, the status quo, even if it's a status quo that's like kind of secretly exciting and fun for a lot of us, like that's, not the sort of thing that we want crypto to continue to be 4 years from now if we actually wanted to succeed.
Is it possible we just get stuck in that niche of that 0 to 10%? I know it's possible, but do you think that's a high probability outcome?
It's a good question. Back in, I think, 2011 or 12, one of the earliest articles that I wrote for Bitcoin Weekly, it was called something like Bitcoin, Esperanto, Linux, or the Internet. Right, basically comparing Bitcoin to like 3 different things that started off as being these very idealistic movements to replace the existing system with a totally different and much better system, right? So Esperanto was this constructed language invented by Ludwig Zamenhof in the late 19th century. The goal basically being to create a language which is easier to learn because it has much simpler and more regular spelling and grammar, the theory was that everyone would learn Esperanto in addition to their national language, and everyone could speak Esperanto with each other, and that would be the path to world peace, right? And Esperanto ended up not really succeeding, right? It's this fairly niche interest community at this point, and there are speakers, but it's like enthusiasts that are just in it as a hobby, like much more than a pragmatic communication tool or like an actual attempts to make world peace at this point, right? And which is like sad. I personally love I never learned Esperanto super deeply, but it's a really cool language. I think the world probably would have been better if it got much more adopted.
What's cool about it, by the way, just to nerd out for just a second, is it a combo of kind of like, is it some sort of Latin derivative, or this is really based from scratch? They built a new language from the ground up, so it's different.
Well, it's Esperanto is interesting. So I have this combination of very positive and critical views of it. I think the critical view is basically that it's a language that's strove to be universal, but actually ended up being very European specific. So for example, the way that you make a plural in Esperanto is you add a J, and a J is pronounced Y, right? So kind of like how in Eastern European languages or in German, right? So if you want to say if you want to, I think try and think of good examples for nouns in Esperanto. This is I think homo is like a person, and homoi is people. Let me just check that quickly. And then you have the n, which is the accusative case, right? The accusative case is the same, how in English you if you're doing something, you say I am doing something. If someone's doing something to you, you say someone's doing something to me. So I is the nominative and me is the accusative. So a lot of European languages have that for nouns and as well as pronouns, and Esperanto has that for nouns as well. So it has a lot of these very European specific features, but at the same time, the good is that it is extremely regular. So it's even things like English, for example, right? You have words like who, what, where, when, why. And then you have that, because, therefore, at that time, right? And so Or if you want like the negative, then you have no one, never, for no reason, right? And like you have this kind of 2x2 table that's really complicated. In Esperanto, it's like it's an incredibly clean system where like I think it's the first half of the word is like, do you mean which? Do you mean that? Do you mean no one? And then the second half of the word is like, are you referring to a person? Or are you referring to a time? Or are you referring to a place? So it's got a lot of regularity in the grammar. It's got a lot of regularity in the spelling, right? So English has a lot of these, really dumb spelling rules, and you have to memorize spellings of a lot of words really thoroughly, including the word thoroughly, which like makes totally no sense.
But I guess that's the point, right? Even if you design the most perfect language from a technical perspective, that's not how you actually get adoption for a language, right? So there's like the theoretical perfection.
Right. So this is the analogy, right? It's it has all these beautiful technical properties, but the adoption roadmap basically went nowhere, right? And instead, like English had too much of a network effect, and especially post World War II, where pretty much every major country except for the United States got turned into ruins. That I think set English on a path to dominance, and I don't really think anything else is in a position to challenge it now, right? So that's Esperanto. Now, Linux is an interesting middle case, right? So Linux is interesting because it's kind of succeeded and it kind of has not succeeded, right? So Linux is this open source operating system, so it's an alternative to things like Mac and Windows. So I'm speaking right now through a computer that is running a Linux distribution. But Linux has had this interesting mixture of success and failure. So Linux on the desktop is mostly a failure. So it is a product that is continuing to be developed, and it is very usable, and I use it, and I think it's great, but it just doesn't quite appeal to the majority of people, right? But on the other hand, Linux has become this really important like back-end thing. So Android, for example, which a lot of phones use, runs on the Linux kernel. A huge portion of all the servers run on Linux. A huge portion of developers, like including people who write the Ethereum codebase, not all, but it's a very significant portion, they run Linux on their computers because Linux is just very developer friendly, right? So there's a lot of specific communities and specific applications in which Linux is very entrenched. And then there's this permanent dream of Linux as an open source operating system becoming this thing that really takes over for everyone, but that just ends up never quite succeeding, right? And then the third is the internet, and the internet is just obviously, completely taken over everything, right? And so my question back in 2011 is Bitcoin going to look more like Esperanto, more like Linux, or more like the internet? And I kind of was willing to accept all three possibilities as being likely, and I wasn't sure yet. I think today cryptocurrency is way past being Esperanto, right? The question is like, how Linuxy is it going to be, or how internet-y is it going to be? And I don't know. I mean, it's very possible that it's going to be in the middle, right? So like, it's very possible that, well, just one example, in developed countries, it's going to be like Linux on the desktop, but in the developing world, it's going to become like ubiquitous. It's very possible that in both worlds, it's going to be something that's organized or concentrated around a few particular industries where, like, say, reversibility of credit card transactions and other things just like totally makes no sense, and cryptocurrency is the best thing that works. It might just be something that people have as a store of value without really using day to day, and when a big crisis comes, it just becomes suddenly really important for people, and people appreciate it, right? Or it's possible that the next basically all of the infrastructure of the next wave of technology is going to be built around Linux. Built around cryptocurrency, right? Hopefully cryptocurrency and Linux.
That would be more the Web3, that last piece is like
exactly.
the Web3 meme.
Yeah, so which one is it going to be? I don't know. And I mean, I am a definite optimist on this. I think which one it's going to turn out to be depends crucially on how hard we try and what we try to do.
Interesting. So you actually think that we have a lot of agency over the outcome of whether or not crypto actually replaces the internet or just provides a few very useful applications?
I think absolutely. I think it's actually really important for like good people in the Ethereum space to recognize that they have agency and exercise it, because I think if good people act passive, then the things that take over just are going to be, the drama queens of the world, right? And like, I think we as people trying to build actually meaningful things, have a responsibility to work hard to drown out the drama queens. And that's a challenge. And I think sometimes we do worse, sometimes we do better, but we got to try.
That is a challenge, Vitalik. But that, like, I'm almost tempted to turn this into like, give us some personal advice here. Like, how do we do that? All right. So I'm leaving partially 2022 again, feeling embarrassed that I'm in crypto. Oh, you have a crypto podcast at your next.
How's that going for you?
How's that going for you? And mainstream people outside, sort of the normies, the people who are in the 90%, not the 10%. They're looking at this industry and being like, "What is this? Just run by a bunch of kind of clowns and scammers? Like, where are the adults? I thought you preach crypto values, and then I see all of this." And so I'm feeling a little down at the end of 2022, but also reflective in terms of like, what could we have done better? What lessons could we learn? Do we need to I know we've talked before about like how you call out, scammers and kind of the social layer, and you can veer too far to one extreme or another. But what are your thoughts, advice for us in general? And then maybe we talk about like lessons for the entire community.
So just to kind of start slowly moving into the blog post we wanted to talk about a bit, we'll start with the first 8 words of it, right? So the title. I intentionally said what in the Ethereum application ecosystem excites me instead of what in the crypto space excites me. This is an experiment I've been trying, right? Basically, like using the word crypto less and using the word Ethereum more. And this is like a subtle thing. I mean, it's still an early stage experiment, so I'm not entirely sure what all of the consequences of kind of emphasizing Ethereum in particular much more would be. But like the theory here, like so first of all, it's not maximalist, right? So it's not saying like, focus on Ethereum to the exclusion of everything else. It's more saying, we are not going to implicitly ally with you just because you are a cryptocurrency by default, right? The problem with the crypto space is that the crypto space is an ungovernable commons that has no barrier to entry, right? So if you remember, the basics of, Eleanor Ostrom's theory of the commons and what commons create tragedies of the commons and what commons can be governed, one of the basic ingredients for a commons to be governed is gatekeeping, right? Like you have to actually be able to, say, this is us and this is not us, and actually be able to have some level of enforcement or filtering in the thing that is us. With the crypto space, like the only qualification to be able to call yourself part of the crypto space and not have people complain is to just like somehow use cryptography and to have some kind of chained data structure somewhere. Like those are literally the qualifications. Like, you don't even need decentralization, right? Like, I forget. Has IOTA even gotten rid of their coordinator yet? I forget now.
No,
right?
The answer is no.
Right. Like, XRP, right? Like, they're like still completely centralized. And, but, at the same time, they are, on CoinMarketCap and, still, I think, haven't apologized for writing documents into the, to the US government, basically saying that they should be favored over Bitcoin and Ethereum because Bitcoin and Ethereum are China controlled.
So Vitalik, when you have a permissionless commons, you're saying
right.
The role of gatekeeper is essential, and that role is essentially a kind of a social layer type role. Let me throw the criticism at you that you might expect to see. You probably won't expect to hear that now, but like earlier this year, you would have expected to hear that. If you talk about the Ethereum ecosystem, well, that makes you an Ethereum maximalist, okay? And crypto is much broader than Ethereum, and we live in a multi-chain world here. And so
and you're just pumping your bags.
And you're just pumping your bags, and decentralized values can exist outside of Ethereum, or the so-called crypto values can exist. So stop limiting yourselves to Ethereum. That was kind of the jujitsu move some pulled whenever you start trying to like redefine the boundaries and start to do a little bit of gatekeeping.
Okay, so this is a good point. So here is my analogy. So suppose that you have an American politician who goes on CNN and he says, Here is a package of policies. Here are some things that I want to deregulate. Here are some things that I want to subsidize. And here are some things that I want to encourage. And the combination of these ideas is needed to reinvigorate American prosperity into the 21st century. If you hear someone saying this from the perspective of a non-American, does that sound America maximalist?
No. Well, right. Yeah, so, no, it doesn't.
Right. It does get a little bit complicated, right? Because like there is definitely I think a real effect where there's like some Americans that sort of act like the non-America world doesn't exist. But I think like just the sentence that I just said, it is totally innocuous, right?
I think the difference though is that people are frequently born into America, and then that's just like not actually their choice. Whereas when you come into the crypto space, you're kind of like a blank slate, and you get to choose your chain or tribe that you align with. So I think that's the biggest difference there.
That is true. Though I think I don't know. I feel like the whole I've even seen immigrants to America be on both sides of the we love American prosperity discourse. But I think even still, sometimes the point that I want to make about Ethereum, right, is that I think that there should be a way to talk about Ethereum that doesn't implicitly, lend credence to the, the Lunas and the XRPs and the IOTAs and the Bitcoin Satoshi's visions of the world, but that still does leave room for kind of valuing the good and the honorable things that are happening in other ecosystems, right? So I'm happy to say that I think the Cosmos ecosystem, for example, I deeply respect it because it is one of the few that's actually trying a very different region of design space, and they have this vision of a number of validators. They use these protocols to talk to each other, and they give up on shared security, but they give up on tight coupling, but they have modularity. And, here's their arguments for why this might be a good idea. And I really respect the fact that, they have a technical vision. They push the technical vision first. They, in my view, have not been pump and dumpy.